Hi, listeners. Today I have a little bit of trivia for you. For those who can remember the Oprah Winfrey Show, I want to know if you can recall what year it was that she stood up and said to her audience, you get a smartphone. So many of us remember when she said, you get a car. But there was a show where she rolled out Oprah's favorite things, and she said to everyone, you are going to get a smartphone. I think at that time it was by Samsung. Apple wasn't in the market as of yet, if I have that correct. But I want to know, do you all remember what year that was? Well, that was a very pivotal year in the process of how we changed our dynamic of how we engage in society. And today, the book, I'm not going to disclose the year yet, but the book we're going to talk about is called The Anxious Generation. It's by Jonathan Haidt. I want to give you the subtitle here. It's How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. So that year, when Oprah gave up all those phones, it really transformed our road to mental wellness and how it changed. And so today I'm here with my colleague, Susie Brown. We are both coaches, family coaches, parent coaches, as well as we coach the children as well. So we are seeing the effect of what smartphones are doing and having, not just on our children, but on us as adults as well. So I want to say to you, if you're listening and perhaps you don't have a child, but you know of a child that is special in your life, I want to encourage you to listen to this podcast, because this is a situation that every adult needs to have their eyes and ears open so that we can help our children get through this season of how their play has changed and how their engagement in social media has changed. We need to swing the pendulum back. We, of course, cannot go before there was smartphones, but we have to learn how to live with them in a healthy way. So, Susie, thank you for joining me on this topic today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. This is a topic I think many parents struggle with, and it's hard to know how to balance um, keeping your kid connected. And we often think that a smartphone is necessary for that. And then balancing that with them still being able to be kids, which I think more and more we see a lot of the kid-like behaviors because they're completely dependent on these handheld devices. And I think this author did a really great job with so many different examples of just how that is so, and how much less play kids have, and at what cost.
Yeah, there are very few books that really just parenting books excite me. I mean, because so many are quite overwhelming. You read through them and you don't even know where to start. You feel like a failure having read the book for help. This book, this book I love because it gives a long-term view. How do you want your child to engage in technology, not just in your home, but at school as well? How can you put some expectations on the school? So I want to share with our listeners that that pivotal year that this book talks about was 2010, when we moved just from cell phones to smartphones that could do all these different things for us. Take pictures. We were so excited about this addition to a phone. It takes pictures. How cool is that? Well, it I like the book how he talks about Silicon Valley really came to our doorsteps and said, "Oh, we'd like to do an experiment on you and your children. Take this phone." When Jonathan Haidt said that in the book. I was just like, wow, it's true. We have been guinea pigs for many years, not recognizing the long-term effects. And this book can definitely, it lays out a correlation between our progression with technology and the decline of our children's mental health.
So one of the things that, and I know I referenced this before, but one of the things that I really appreciated about with some of the earlier chapters was where he was talking about the importance of a play-based childhood and what kids learn from play. And it's not just cell phones that unfortunately, or smartphones that have infringed on this playtime, but also parents, because we are helicoptering our children into much less and less risk. And risk is actually a good thing, because free play is where kids are learning things like negotiation and compromise and trying difficult things and getting dirty and just letting themselves be in the moment. And there's a lot of reciprocal sorts of relationships and interactions that both all the parties that are taking part in that free play really benefit from. They learn their communication skills. They learn how to name what they want and how to help others understand what it is they want. So it builds their social connections. It builds their verbal skills. I mean, it's so valuable. And more kids don't play. One of the examples that he gave, and this was in one of the later chapters where he was talking about how smartphones have negatively impacted kids. And he was saying how the number of hospitalizations has actually decreased. And in many people's minds, that would probably be, well, that's a good thing. You know, we don't want our kids to be hospitalized. But this is because kids don't take risks. Kids don't play. They don't climb trees. They don't, run around and fall and hurt themselves and get back up and try again. All they do is sit in isolation in their room on their mobile device. And one other point, sorry to just ramble. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, and I hadn't really thought about it before, was how communication and how we learn from communications interactions. It's very reciprocal, right? Like, so I say something, you say something. I say something in response. You say something in response. So it's kind of this give and take, back and forth sort of a relationship. On social media, it is extraordinarily one way. And there is no such, the person that you are watching or video or liking or whatnot on your Instagram feed or your Snapchat or whatever, they don't care that you're watching. There's no sort of interaction on their part. It is just completely one-sided. And so this is a reinforcement of that feeling of isolation and loneliness that kids are feeling more and more of.
Exactly, Susie. I don't know if when you were reading it, we did another podcast on a book that is one of my favorite as well, by Julie Lythcott. Let me make sure I say her name correctly. Julie Lythcott-Haims. Her book is titled How to Raise an Adult. Break free of the over-parenting trap and prepare your kid for success. Remember, in that book, she talked about this whole safetyism, keeping our kids protected. We stand next to them at the park, hoping they don't fall. And if they fall, we pick them up instead of just letting them work it out. We have really sheltered our kids from the outdoors and having those falls and making mistakes and having those arguments with kids and figuring out how to solve them without us jumping in. So this book really coincides. I think they're great books to read back to back together because, again, I think even in Julie's book, she talks about how did we move to this shift of safetyism. And, change sometimes when it's so incremental, small, and it's in the way that it evolves, we wonder when it all hits us in the face, how did we get here? But these two books do such a good job of how did we get here? How are our children being raised so differently from us? And when we talk about how we value the play that we had, how we valued being able to go to the store on our own when we were 11 years old. I mean, some of our kids don't even, we don't trust our kids to go to the store at 15. This is not healthy. And so we have to look at the way we're parenting. And that's why I highly recommend these two books together, because it's going to really challenge your mindset of, wow, am I letting my child be independent enough in other areas that will take their mind off of the technology? Am I allowing them, giving them enough experiences in the outdoor? And being expats and living abroad, we really have that benefit of going to see new things almost every day. And so I tell parents quite regularly, it's not about taking the device away. It's about determining what it is you want to do instead. And so that sometimes, when a teenager, you'll ask them what they want to do. Of course, they're going to reply nothing. Sometimes it's just really looking at the things they like, and it's picking them up on a Friday after school and kind of kidnapping them and taking them somewhere that, like when you connect the dots, your child's personality, the things they like, you just take a risk and go, I think they might like this experience, and go for it. Because sometimes we don't know what we want until we actually been exposed to it.
And it's easy to say no to a new experience if it sounds something like you might have to put out some effort in order to experience it. No, I agree completely. And certainly, although of course parents know best, but not always, right? Sometimes we want to let the kids have their say as well, but the more dependent they are on that handheld device to determining their activities, determining how they're passing their time, the less they're going to want to invest any actual effort into having an activity that does not involve the device. I think this is certainly something that we incorporate or we try to incorporate in the house, and we do the whole cell phone contract when the kids have received their cell phones, but also, the devices not being in the room, and trying to organize their free time, trying to make sure that they do have free time away from a device. It's really important, but it's also sometimes hard to battle that constant whining and really tenacious grip on that device, especially as your kids are already maybe complicated teenagers, which I think is more often the case than not.
But, I just want to encourage parents. Yes, there is going to be a resistance, but you have got to stay connected to the reason why you're doing this. I often say to the parents I work with, it is important for your child to know this is not about the device. It's that you care about them. Stop talking about the device and say, I care about your future. I care about the way you're engaging. I really want to see you succeed. Now, then that's a conversation. It's not something that you're a power control. But I think parents need to understand that it is possible. It is not a hopeless case to get these devices away from your children. This book, I think, is more so calling parents to recognize, hey, this is what is happening. Get in touch with that conviction you have to give your child the best life. And that will guide you. Don't be so afraid of focus about all these different things to reduce screen time. but really get it in your mindset. Here's one thing that startled me and just, oh, it opened up the clouds. It talked about the difference between girls and boys and how they engage technology. And so for girls, it states that girls are more likely to use social media platforms like Instagram, which they can become arenas for constant social comparison and relational aggression. This environment can amplify, feelings of inadequacy and anxiety as girls often engage in comparing their lives and appearances to others. So our girls are cleaving to pictures so they can compare their lives and appearances to others. While the boys, on the other hand, tend to spend more time on video games and in some cases, pornography. These activities can lead to social withdrawal and a preference for virtual interactions over real world relationships. And although I've been seeing this, I just didn't really have those distinct categories to put them in. Girls are looking for approval, boys are looking for escape. Leave me alone. I want to retreat to my room. I want to have my conversations with my gaming friends online that really don't acquire require much of me. But in person, relationships require a lot. I have to speak a lot. I have to answer a lot of questions. Here, we're on this game. We have the same mission to win. All of our conversation is about that. We don't really have to talk about all the things in the world. That's a great place to escape. So, what do we do with that? And that is just an awesome question that this book entertains.
I thought it was really interesting how the social media interactions of both boys and girls was so hugely impacted and in such different ways, but in ways that as adults with fully formed sense of self, fully formed sense of agency, etc., we can understand how what we see online is not real. For example, in the girl's case, we know that those images that we see in those photos, they look amazing. Those women look amazing. But we also know more likely than not, they're either AI generated or somehow edited to be to more exemplify what the ideal is, right? And boys think that, you know, they are hanging out with their quote unquote buddies in their video games, and they're accomplishing this mission together. But they're, in both cases, they're trying to connect to things that are not even real, right? Like there is no sense of actual community that they're building, because what they're trying to connect to doesn't come back and give them any benefit, right? And so it's just so sad and so shocking that our kids are being negatively impacted by things that aren't even real, except they are, of course, obviously to our kids. I think one of the most important points, I mean, there's so many valid and very critical points that he makes in here, but one of the later chapters, the author is talking about different things that different people can do, you know, as parents, as communities, as government officials. And one of the things that I thought was really important was keeping the cell phones out of the schools. And part of that is obviously to help teachers to actually be able to effectively teach in a classroom, right? Because if you have every face looking at a cell phone, you know those kids aren't listening. They're not connecting with the information that's being presented. So there's that. But then the other part is getting those kids away from those social media platforms, at least for the school hours. It actually makes such a positive difference in the kids' psyche, in their mental well-being. just having them connect to like real human beings and try to navigate, the social relationships and the complications that come with connecting with other human beings. It's such a valid learning experience. And I actually, when he was talking about that, I looked it up online, and apparently in the US, roughly 76% of schools do not allow cell phone usage during the school hours. And apparently there's a number of different states as well that are limiting kids' devices to even be connected to the district internet providers, which, like, how amazing is that? I think, either having lockable devices or containers for the phones, or just don't even bring your phone because it's not going to be able to connect to anything. These are very they sound punitive, but they're really effective ways to get kids to get off their devices.
And Susie, you talked about 2 C's, connection and community. So for connection, I think we have to recognize, although our kids are even with their friends on the phone, they're not feeling connected. And we have to have a conversation with our kids to help them even identify, like, when is the time in your past you felt most alive, most connected? And just listen to what they're saying. And these are the experiences that you want to try to recreate for them. Because, when we're engaged in a conversation, okay, let's give this example. How many of us go to one of these socials and there are hundreds of people there, but we don't feel connected? And we walk away sometimes going, we've been around a whole bunch of people. Why do I feel this loneliness? Because nothing there was enriching and that we could connect to. And that's the thing we have to think about for our kids. And two things that really bring about connection. This book, it talked about, just doing things that you've never done before. So he talks about a situation, I think, in a school system where they kind of make it homework, where you have to go and do something you've never done before. So the connection is not just about with others, but connecting to yourself. Like, who am I? What things am I interested in trying? And then in the other book that I talked about, How to Raise an Adult, they have a whole list of chores that kids should do at a certain age. This also brings about connection. I have value in my family. There's something that I'm responsible for. Now, I know most parents go, that's not how a kid feels, but it is true. Chores help build confidence and connection with agency, your child's sense of agency. Now, on to community. What I really loved about this book, he didn't say the answer lies with parents. It lies with the community, our politicians, these companies, tech companies, the school system, and the percentage of change, positive change that occurs in schools that lock the phones up is so startling. It's undeniable when we put these phones away. And I mean, not tuck them in their backpacks so teachers have to be the police. No. And I get it. Here's another reason why schools and parents don't often back it. It's because of the shootings, because they want to have a direct line to their kids. I hate that we're even having this conversation, or parents have to say, no, I don't want my kid to put their phone up. This very thing that's causing so much distraction because of the percentage rate that the small, even though it's too much, that their school might have a lockdown and I won't be able to hear from. It's very sad. Mm-hmm. But I just do believe that the benefits outweigh the small possibility that those things will happen at your child's school.
I do think, I mean, there's that the sense of community, the greater the sense of community. I mean, I'm not going to say that, you know, if we all sit around and sing Kumbaya and connect, that there'll be fewer shootings. But I think that that's a piece of it. I really think that the more we connect to other people, connect to other human beings, rather than inanimate objects, rather than screens where, you know, you get shot and then you just restart your life again. Connect to reality. I feel like the more we help our kids do that, the more we'll be able to protect them from horrible things like school shootings, because people who might be that desperate or that unhappy might have a community to draw on, so they don't drop to that level where they feel that the only answer is to take a gun to school and shoot their friends or teachers. I mean, one of the connections that this author made was also, you know, the spiritual degradation, he said. And it's not in a sense of, you know, you have to go to church more. That isn't the only place that people can find and develop their spirituality. That's really just a connection to something greater than yourself. You know, maybe it is your community. Maybe it is something much larger than that. Maybe it's just connecting to nature, finding awe in nature, building curiosity. You can't do that through a telephone. And I feel like, or I'm sorry, a smartphone. But I do feel like we're not allowing our children to do that if they are so connected to their device, which does not allow them to connect to something greater than themselves.
Mm-hmm. You know, we have this benefit being a part of the diplomatic foreign service community, in that our schools are not as big, don't have many of the problems that students are facing here in the US. And we should really lean into that, right? Because it's easier to build community in these smaller schools. And what the book is saying, that parents got together and went to the school system and said, it's okay, we're in agreement. Like, lock the phones up, and we support that. And so I think it's an easier thing to do within our community, that we could. And now, granted, we have different cultures, we have people coming from all different walks of life that will have different opinions. And it's, you know, worth listening to each other and really working through trying to figure out how you can change the policies at your school. Because again, Susie, like you said, I was really surprised that some of these schools not are only turning away from smartphones, but they're also getting rid of laptops and computer access throughout the day. That was really wow. Again, that's moving the pendulum back so we can figure out how we can find this middle again, or this new middle, right? Because we want the benefits of technology, but we want to mitigate the side effects.
I think, and this is not a discussion about curriculum, but I do think that the curricula that do inspire greater amounts of critical thinking and working with your peers and, you know, asking questions and trying to figure out how the information you learn from one group set of information might apply towards other parameters. I think these types of curricula are so effective at schools because they help kids put down the device, because you can't find these answers in your laptop, in your smartphone. And they help kids really use their brains to make connections between information in a way that will benefit them in the future. I mean, I totally drink the Kool-Aid on the IB curricula, and I feel like it is definitely the way to inspire that sort of critical thinking. But I also feel like there are other curriculums out there as well, but these are the schools that really inspire kids to ask questions and get really invested in the learning process. Just, reading worksheets, doing worksheets, and then reading PowerPoint presentations. This isn't going to help our kids learn anything. It's really putting down the devices and really interacting with the information. These are the kinds of schools that are going to help our kids learn more, gain more knowledge. I've noticed our school did this for 2 consecutive years, and I know other schools are doing this as well, and they're cutting down the amount of time that kids actually spend in the class time, and they're giving them longer break times, because this allows them to gives them time to process what they've learned. It also gives them time to communicate with their peers and hang out with their friends, which that social element is so important. Having a longer and more intense math block would probably allow them to do a couple more problems, but really, like, what does that gain at the end of the day?
Yeah. Susie, do you remember I know one of the solutions that they talked about is delaying smartphone use. Do you remember what age? I think it's till ninth grade. Is that right? So, of course, giving the younger ones a phone so they can contact you and you can contact them, that has bare minimal features.
Right.
But I remember, was it ninth grade?
I think, yeah, it was grade age 13.
Or 8? Okay. And I thought that was good. They talk about, how parents have come up or how science has researched and found out that that's a good age, right? So that's why I highly recommend this book for newbie parents, because you need to have that long-term view so you know where you're working towards. So like you're not taking the iPad to the restaurant and giving it to your child while they eat. And I get it. It makes the life a lot easier. But a family game would be suffice, because it would make them talk to you and you talk to them. So these things are not hard. I want to say that parenting is not easy, as you all know, but we do have to make hard decisions if we want our kids to go and be healthy. We'll argue about food, but we also have to look at all the things that they intake with their eyes and their ears. The other thing I wanted to say about is we don't lean on each other as peers and other parents and kind of come together. And how could you possibly, when the kids are at your house at a group, just make it fun, like see if they are willing to put their phones down for 30 minutes for $20. I mean, just see. It's like, ask them, would they? And just kind of see what would it take, but kind of throw out some scenarios instead of just saying, why don't you get off the cell phone, put it down? Or you can say, what if I take you to the beach? Would you put your phones down for an hour? What if I agree to take you to a Taylor Swift concert? Would you put your phone down for a day? Just throw out and see where they are. How much it takes to get that phone out of their hands.
I'd put my phone down for a Taylor Swift concert. You gonna take me, Shreya?
Yeah, I can't make any promises, but it was good to know that. Let's find out what concert around here you might be interested in.
What is the point of having like a hangout with your buddies if all of you are just gonna sit, in proximity to one another and be on your phone? Like, hang out. That's the whole point. Make it a rule. If you have if you have sleepovers or kids over, put a phone basket out, and that's where the phones stay. And then they actually hang out and interact and connect and do the goofy things that kids do. I mean, you and I are both parents of boys, and so I think that's in many ways, well, it's a very different animal than parenting girls. And I know that girls are according to the studies that are cited in this particular book, very, very much into the social media apps and seeing who likes what and posting pictures. But I bet I bet boys and girls alike would put their phones down just to like actually connect in real life with their friends. I think that is really what they value at the end of the day.
Yeah. In the book, the parents band together. So one parent said that their kids are over at their house, then they're going to make that a cell-free smartphone zone. And so they band together, and that's the point. It's just how can you band with others, particularly someone that an adult your child likes? Can you ask them just to take your child out and kind of just go, hey, I'm gonna take you out, but just put the phone down and we're gonna have some fun, because they won't. Chances are they'll listen to them. They know socially, like, they shouldn't embarrass themselves and go, no, I'm not putting my phone down. Now to us they will. But if you just really reach out to a friend, a family member, somebody that your kid likes, and just say, hey, I want them to have experiences without their cell phone, would you mind just reaching out to them? And people are willing, but we have to ask. And I'm so adamant that we need to start parenting within a community more and more, because we as parents have become isolated and lonely. And what do? We retreat to our cell phones. We go and veg out on Netflix. No, those things we know allow us to kind of just escape, but do we feel refreshed? And I'm speaking to my own self. I will look at YouTube videos and just go, oh, I deserve to sit here and just veg out, right? But do I feel refreshed afterwards? No. I just feel like, oh, I got to escape life for an hour, but I'm not rejuvenated. So those are two different things. Susie, you have any closing words for us?
Well, I feel like we've talked about a lot of different points that were touched on in the book. The importance of play, the importance of that real life connection for kids and for adults, as you just said. The importance of understanding what real life can contribute to one's knowledge gain, etc. And it's not something that you can gain from social media interactions, and the importance of putting down your device. I think you mentioned a couple different books that we've read before as blobbers, and then we also he references another really great book that I read a few years ago, and that was Free Range Kids. That's another really great one that supports getting kids that sense of independence and allowing them to actually do things like walk to the store or ride a metro by themselves, or like these are like real life skills. And we are helicoptering our kids into a corner, and they don't know how to do these things for themselves. We can link all of these things in the notes.
Yeah, we did that on podcast 56. So way back when, episode 56, we did Raising an Adult, a discussion for parents. So I agree. These three books should go together. The Anxious Generation, Free Range Kids. Is that right? Free Range Kids. And then How to Raise an Adult. Oh my gosh, it will really change your mindset. And once your mind is changed, you'll find the answer bit by bit. You'll begin, oh, I can do this. I don't have to be drastic in the change. This part I know our family can do. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Bye, everybody.